Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. Good evening. My name is Sarah Rubin. I'm going to be facilitating for us this evening with our public webinar on the upcoming state abandonment project effort. We are so glad you could join us. The very first thing we are going to do is we're going to talk about interpretation that's available this evening. Next slide. Perfect. Leticia, our interpreter, is going to go over interpretation options. Welcome, Leticia.
Hi, thank you. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Les quiero dar la bienvenida a este seminario web público que va a ser sobre los próximos proyectos de abandono estatal. Vamos a dar un poco de instrucción para que usted pueda acceder a la reunión en el español. En los controles de la reunión usted va a ver una parte de su página que está localizado de abajo. Usted le puede hacer clic en el idioma que usted escuchar la reunión. Le va a poder ver la opción que le da, sea en inglés o sea en el español. Para escuchar solamente el idioma interpretado, usted le va a hacer clic para silenciar su audio, a silenciar su audio original. Y así va a poder acceder a escuchar la reunión en el español. Muchas gracias. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. So in just a moment, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little world icon, as you see here in the middle of the slide. And you can select the language you're most comfortable in. If you are someone who is most comfortable in English, I suggest you go ahead and click the icon for English. So if later in our meeting we have somebody providing a comment or question in Spanish, you will hear the interpreter relay that person's question or comment in English on your audio. All righty, let's keep going. Next slide. So here we are in the middle of our welcome. And again, for those of you who've just joined in the last minute or so, welcome. My name is Sarah Rubin at the Department of Conservation, and we're thrilled you would take the time to join us this evening to get some important updates. I'm about to hand things over to our State Oil and Gas Supervisor, Doug Ito, and then Robert Schaff, who's the head of our state abandonment program, is going to give you an overview and talk about some adjusted timelines. And then our 3 regional local leads are going to give you specific updates about what's happening with wells that could be in your region and some accomplishments to date. And then we'll open things up for your comments and questions. So let's get going. All right, Doug, welcome.
All right, good evening. Thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate you taking time out of your evening. This is another one in our series of engagement events that we've been putting together to keep you informed with the State Abandonment Project progress. So we have a short presentation, and I'll hand it off to Robert to begin. But thank you for staying tonight with us.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Robert Schaff, the State Abandonment Program Manager for CalGEM. And today I'm going to give a program overview. I know there may be some new people joining us to just get you up to date on what the program's about. And then talk a little bit about our adjusted timelines, to some things that have been going on. Next slide, please. For a little bit of an overview of the state abandonment program, there are approximately 5,300 orphaned oil and gas wells across the state of California. An orphan well is one that there's not really a financially responsible operator that has the means to abandon the well, so it's left to the state to do the abandonment of it. We've known about this problem for quite a while, but until recently, we didn't have the money to do anything about it. But fortunately, that's changed. We do now have state funds available to address this issue. And we've also received federal grants to help fund the program across the state. So we're going to be able to get started with abandoning wells in various places across the state. We won't be able to abandon them all, but we're going to get a good start on taking care of this problem that we know exists. Next slide, please. So in phase one of our program, we're going to spend approximately $80 million on state abandonment projects to tackle 378 wells, of which we've started abandoning some of these already in Cat Canyon and in Bakersfield area. Roughly 31 million or 40% of the funds are going to address wells in disadvantaged communities. And this is going to be our goal throughout the program, is to spend at least 40% of the money in disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. These first phase projects are tackling high-risk wells. And by high-risk wells, we mean wells that could be leaking, that are near people, near housing, near schools, near hospitals. And they pose a threat to California communities, both to people's health and also to the environment. The program includes orphan wells that have been found to be leaking in the Los Angeles area as well as in Kern County. Their program includes orphan wells that have been declared hazardous and other wells that are located near people that have had a history of leaks. So this first phase is focusing on the high-risk wells that we've identified in the state. Next slide, please. So where are we? Well, CalGEM has been diligently working on this program along with our contractors, and we're ready to start the work. However, additional reviews are going to be required by the U.S. Department of Interior before we can actually start this abandonment work, because as I mentioned, much of the program is going to be funded by federal grants. Included in this additional review are clarifications on our endangered species reviews. We have done these reviews, but we have to now focus on some of the requirements that the federal government has on these reviews. Likewise, we've been looking at doing cultural review. We've done cultural reviews of our first projects for historic sites. We haven't found any as of yet, but we need to do it a more definitive review to meet the requirements of the Department of Interior. And likewise, we've done tribal engagement where we've contacted tribal groups across the state to tell them about our program and make sure we're not impacting ancestral tribal areas. But we may have to do some additional work on that for the federal process. We've done it as far as the state process goes as part of the CEQA program. Next slide, please. So where does that put us? Well, we've already updated our endangered species reports for our first projects, which include the Allen Cove project in Los Angeles, projects in Oxnard, Kern Bluff in the Bakersfield area, and Mountain View, which are the wells around Arvin. We're updating the cultural reports for the first projects, and then they're being prepared as we speak. There is quite a bit of work that needs to be completed on those in order to meet these requirements. And also, we're identifying the things that we're going to need to do for additional tribal outreach to make sure we comply with all federal requirements for engaging tribal groups across the state. In addition, we're obtaining land access agreements for the areas that we're going on. Most of them are already in place. We still have a few more to go, but we're made excellent progress on that. Putting that all together, we still have that goal of trying to get this program going this year, and that looks now like the fourth quarter of this year is what our best possibility is. We do have to understand that some of the things now, because these are being reviewed by various agencies, both federal agencies and also agencies within the states, some of this is out of our control. But we are putting the manpower and resources that we need to get this done as quickly as possible, with the hope that we're going to get this started before the year ends. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you. Okay, so now we are going to give you some region by region updates. Here we go. Next slide. Oh, okay, great. All right, so my colleague Ibakun is going to update us on efforts in the Ventura and LA County area. Go ahead, Ibakun.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ibukun Ajayi, and I'm a senior oil and gas engineer in the Northern District Division District, and I am the project manager overseeing the Phase 1 execution in the Ventura and LA County. Next slide. So on this slide, I just showed the 5 sites that are part of the Phase 1 package. The first one being Oxnard, represented by the yellow light blue box over there. We have 39 wells and associated facilities that are part of that package in that area that we're going to be decommissioning. Next to that is West Montalvo, where we have 6 wells. Then north of that, in the orange box, we have 2 wells in the Satakoy field area. Then to the far right on your screen right there in the darker blue box, we have 2 wells in the Simi Valley. Then up north as well, we have 2 wells in the Placerita field area, and that's in the LA County. So a total of 51 wells that are going to be part of the Phase 1 package that will be happening in Ventura and the LA County area. Next slide, please.
Hey, Ibakun.
Yes?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make an announcement to everyone that we've realized we're having an issue with the translation interpretation channel here on Zoom. But we do have a toll-free telephone number with Spanish interpretation happening. So for those of you, anybody who would like that, Leticia, I don't know if it's easy enough for you to come off mute to mention that anybody who would like Spanish could go on to the 888 number.
Yes, of course. I've been interpreting on the bridge line, but I will say that. Mis disculpas a todos los que puedan querer acceder a la junta en español. Tenemos un poco de dificultad técnica ahora por la plataforma de Zoom y les estamos pidiendo si por favor gustan escucharlo en español que acceden al número por teléfono que puede escuchar la interpretación ahí, es el número 888-455-1820. Incluso creo que lo pueden mirar en la página del chat. Para participar, el código es 415-9696. Usted puede presionar ahí y escuchar la interpretación por teléfono. Muchas gracias y disculpe por el problema técnico que hay. Go ahead, back to you.
Perfect, gracias. Okay, Ibakun, go ahead. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. So on this slide, I'll be going through a couple of accomplishment things that we've been able to accomplish up to this present time. So once the wells were selected, based on the criteria that Robert described earlier on, what we did in the district, we kicked off an outreach and engagement session. Tried to reach all the surface owners to discuss the project goals, and subsequently we've been able to obtain site agreement for all the sites that are going to be involved in our project. We've also conducted a full environmental site assessment for all the 51 wells in our Phase 1 across all the 5 sites. And the output from this assessment was used to develop a restoration plan. We worked with the programs team and we've completed the CEQA reviews for all the wells, and we've obtained the exemption requirements as well for those wells. We've also completed a full biological survey for all the 5 sites, and this was really to assess all the endangered species in the area, and we've developed the mitigation plans that were compiled in the report, also referenced earlier on by Robert. We've also carried out a full pre-plug methane testing for all our wells. So we've completed a full methane testing for all the 51 wells that are included in our package as well. Next slide, please. Other things we've done on the engagement front, we've had several interactions and meetings with our state, local government agencies to discuss the project plan, agencies such as the Water Board, Air District, etc. And this is really to ensure that we are fully in compliance with all the agency requirements and how we execute this work. We also held a full public meeting in June, and this was really to reach out to the community in the area. The meeting was conducted in Spanish, Mixteco, and English, so we have a broad range of contacts with everybody that might be involved and all the stakeholders in the areas. We've been working with a contractor. We have a contractor that has been selected to do the work, Drill Tech, and we've been working with a contractor in close coordination, prepping for this work. We've finalized the detailed plug and abandonment work for the program. We've also completed an emergency response plan, and we've actually carried out the spill drill training with the contractor as well. We're still working through some other planning activities with the contractor and just in preparation for the work. But as Robert referenced earlier, we're completely at the ready to get the work going. So that brings me to the end of what we've done in the Northern District.
Perfect. Thank you, Ibakun. All right, so now we are going to go to Central and Kern County. Cameron, you ready?
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Campbell, the project manager here in the Central District, located in Bakersfield, California. I'm a supervising oil and gas engineer, responsible. Other duties included overseeing all of our field environmental lease inspections. Next slide, please. For Central District, our phase one program had a total of 99 wells, of which 46 are located in the Kern Bluff field in northeast Bakersfield, in the top right of your screen. Mountain View should be different, but there's 41 wells. Of course, there's 14 located in Fuller Acres, 25 in Arvin. There's 2 that are kind of between Arvin and Fuller Acres and that were incorporated in that. And then we have 12 located within the Fruitvale field, just north of the Kern River near the refinery. And there's also 5 other wells that aren't shown on this map. They're kind of spread out a little bit more west of Bakersfield. One of them is all the way up in Fresno County. So for scale, we just aren't showing this for this presentation. Next slide. Similar to Ibakun in the Northern District, again, we've been working diligently with our main contractor, Atlas, and a full varying site of subcontractors. We're getting all of the site access and outreach. Again, talking with the different folks, looking at how we're going to do things, property owners. We've got all of our access agreements for all but 6 of the surface owners for the whole program, which encompasses 16 of the 99 wells. Still left to get those agreements in place. And most of those are just nearing finalization. We've also conducted the environmental site assessments for all the 99 wells. And this looks at kind of a pre-survey, but also any threatened and endangered species, any mitigation or other things that also need to take place. So that's all wrapped up. And then, of course, that's also kind of used with our CEQA review and exemption requests, which were needed for 18 of the 99 wells, as the other ones didn't need it because they're located in agriculture or other areas where there's a lot of disturbance going on a regular basis. And of course, we've conducted biological surveys as well for all the 99 sites. One thing that we've also had to do, and we will also do upon completion of it, is doing a pre-plug methane testing where we go on site for 4 to 6 hours. And we basically put monitors over the wells and open close to see what the true capacity is, as well as is there any subtle leaks that occur. So that's an ongoing process that we've been able to complete for 87 of the 99 wells. We're still working in the elements as we go forward. Next one. Some of the other things, again, many of you on the call may have participated in our Kern Bluff community outreach we held at our office in Bakersfield or in Arvin back in May. But we're also working with our local and state government leaders, such as the city of Bakersfield, Kern County, the San Joaquin Nair Valley Pollution Control District, Regional Water Control, Quality Control Board, and others. And so as part of that, we're trying to incorporate any concerns, but also partnerships, especially when we look at some of the larger fields, where there's tanks and facilities, to make sure all of those sites are assessed and also concur with their requirements. And lastly, as I mentioned, with our contractor status, again, Atlas is our primary contractor. We've already been doing work up on Kern Bluff. We've stabilized the site. There was a lot of refuse that people were just illegally disposing of. We've already cleared a lot of that. I think it was about 40 cubic yards of that. We've hauled off all the fluids in the tanks and really gotten the site stabilized, ready to go, so that there's no further environmental issues during the delay as we were prepping to start working on that. Similar within Arvin and Fuller Acres, again, we continually are assessing those sites, working with those landowners, trying to find how do we go into the sites. Some of these are kind of dispersed amongst almond and pistachio orchards. So we're trying to work with them on how to minimize any loss of crop. Similarly, with some of the ground crops, making sure we're coinciding at the end of their harvests, not to disturb future harvests in the process as well. That being said, for those that have questions that are local, again, I'm always available. Happy to meet you, and thank you for joining tonight's event. Back to you, Sarah.
Perfect. Thanks, Cameron. All right. So now we're going to turn to Netta, who's going to be talking about what is happening in Los Angeles County. Netta, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Neda Tafi. I'm a senior oil and gas engineer. I'm the project manager for the state abandonment projects in Southern District. Next slide, please. So in phase one, we have 31 well and their associated facility across 6 fields, which they will be plugged and decommissioned. We have 20 wells in La Cienegas field, which known as Alenco, and you can see it in the middle of the map within the black box. And then we move on to the Canoga Park, which is in the north side in the green box. We have 6 wells in Canoga Park, and then in the Esperanza field, which is in the city of Yorba Linda, we have 1 well. And then in Brea, Olinda, which is in the purple box, we have 1 well in Brea field. And then 2 wells in the Huntington Beach, which is, they are located in the Orange County, and 1 in Long Beach. So in total, the Alenco, Canoga Park, and Long Beach, they are located in the LA County, and then Esperanza, Brea, and Huntington Beach are located in the Orange County. Next slide, please. So what we have done up to date in LA County and Orange County, biological surveys have been conducted across all the fields. Environmental site assessment are done in all fields. Access agreement, permission are in place for Alenco and Huntington Beach. We are working on the remaining fields for access agreement to secure the access agreement. And then CEQA reviews and exemption requirement are completed for Alenco and Huntington Beach and Long Beach fields. Initial study are ongoing for Canoga Park, Esperanza, and Brea. So pre-plug methane testing completed for all wells in Alenco. Next slide, please. So our contractor, which is DrillTech, we have been working on the planning portion. All operational planning, such as emergency response plan, health and safety plan, sampling plan, well program, abandonment, and also site stabilization plan have been developed for Alenco, and planning for the remaining site is in progress. For engagement, we had meeting with other state agency and local agencies such as LA County, LA City, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and AQMD. We also have a monthly stakeholder meeting with local agency and community representative every month for Alenco. And then as part of our community outreach, we have conducted a public outreach meeting with Esperanza community at Sterla Park on June. On August, we had a community canvassing in University Park neighborhood with LA, in conjunction with the LA Department of Health. And then we are going to have a hybrid public outreach meeting with Esperanza community at Mercado La Paloma on October 7th. We pass it to Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is where we invite you to share your questions if you want to use the raise your hand function. Let's see, you are welcome to ask any questions or if you have any comment you want to share. Okay, here comes one. All right, here they come. All right, so, oh, hi, Eliana. Welcome. Let's see. I'm not seeing an unmute option for Eliana. Kelsey, can you help me out with that? Uh-oh.
Hi, sorry, this is Eliana's coworker, Cesar.
Oh, hey, Cesar, welcome.
Thank you for all this information and the update. I think I had just two clarifying questions. I know some of the work has been postponed, but I believe some of it has gone forward. I've driven past the Truxton Extension Park while some of the crew was like taking the well head or the pump jack away. So I know some of it is still moving and underway. And then I also heard from, I think it was Cameron's, that they were doing pre-testing for the methane. And I was wondering if any of that information was going to be made public.
Great, thanks. Cameron?
Yeah, thanks, Cesar. So the work that's being done along Truxton Extension is a separate set of packages that we have. That's a project that we had under a court order to perform work on behalf of Griffin, who's an active operator. And so that work is being done because they were not complying with numerous orders, and ultimately Kern County Court basically found in favor of us, and as such, we're doing that work. So that's more of like an emergency abandonment as part of the gas leak that they incurred into the city municipal lines. But as far as the data goes, kind of switching gears to the methane testing and all the other data, all of the material is public record, and so we'll have all of this will be posted. I think we have a website we're going to set up for each of the districts that'll have each of the programs, and so this information is all going to be available for public. And so it is you and your team. Again, if you start reviewing the material when we start posting and have questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to kind of help walk through what it is, because it'll be rather large between all of the different files and so forth. But thanks for asking, Susan.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying the work that I was witnessing being done, and then also for clarifying the information on the pre-testing.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, Rhoda, I'm so glad you could come. So we'll go to Rhoda, and then Haley, I'll come to you next. Go ahead, Rhoda. Kelsey, I can't tell if she's unmuted for some reason on my screen. Oh. Rhoda,
Unmuted.
oh, yay. Okay, we got you now. Go ahead.
Sarah, I want to thank you for reaching out to us and Doug for providing all the wonderful support that we've been getting. And I look forward to seeing copies of these slides and other information, like the methane readings that you're getting in Canoga Park and some of the other information. I haven't seen anyone address soil remediation, and that's a concern in Canoga Park because in there's a proposed housing development, and they're talking about moving 750,000 cubic feet of, or almost 1 million cubic feet of soil, and I'm concerned about your remediation efforts and how that plays in if a contractor is given go-ahead by the county to start doing massive land moving.
I don't know if Doug or Netta or Robert, who wants to take that one about the soil?
Yeah, Netta, do you want to talk a little bit about the part of the abandonment process that comes after the well is plugged?
And also I'd like to address what you do when you have somebody who may start construction, massive construction, earth moving while you're doing this work.
Got it. Go ahead, Netta.
And then just before Netta goes, and then Robert, if you can do a little bit on the interaction on the construction site review step that's separate from the abandonment, but related.
Netta, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, for Canoga Park, we are in the planning section. We haven't, because it's the next project, we are going to be done with the Alenco and then move on to the Canoga Park. For the remediation portion, we will do a site assessment. We haven't actually, as I said, we haven't started yet. And that's why we had a meeting with the LA County and LA City almost a week before to just find out if there is any development and if they have any concern, so they can let us know. We can start working on that.
Okay, and I'd like to add to that is that we have been working with the water boards across the state on these projects to make them aware that we're doing this work. No. One of the things that we were going to work with them on is testing the soil to see just what kind of impact the oil production has had on that. And so after, first you have to abandon the wells. No matter what you're going to do, there's not going to be construction projects where we're still have to abandon the wells. That's not going to happen. And afterwards, from what we find out about it, the water board's going to have to work with the landowners to see what kind of remediation needs to be done in order to bring the property up to standards. So this is something that's been required all along. And part of what we do is that when people want to do construction in an area that used to be an oil field, we do what's called construction well reviews so that we make them aware of what's out there and what can or shouldn't be done in relation to the project there and what they could build and what they need to be aware of to go forward. So basically, to answer your question, all the issues as far as soil remediation are going to be addressed, and they will be especially addressed if somebody wants to do a construction project out there, because that's where the water board gets fully involved before construction can happen.
Okay, let me clarify. NIME wants to build a housing project called West Hills Crest with 25 homes And I believe it's 750,000 or 1 million square feet of soil is going to be moved. And he's on the hook to produce an EIR, and it's been over a year. He hasn't produced it yet, but LA County is working with him. Regional planning is working with him, Maria Pavlovic. And I'm concerned about him moving forward before this happens. I asked about a special review with CalGEM that I don't know if it's the construction side. I thought it had 4 letters, and they had not decided when I had spoken to them whether they would require this or not. And I want to make sure you all are familiar with this issue, because if he's moving soil on the other part of this, I think 57 acres, I'm concerned. You know, we have 6 wells that we don't know where they are.
Yeah. Hey, Rhoda, I think this is such a site-specific issue. We should do an additional phone call with you outside of this meeting. That way we can all look like at the map together and talk it through. And as you know, I have your phone number. Would that be okay?
That would be wonderful, and I don't mean to drag you.
No, it's fine.
But thank you all for all the effort and all the care you're taking of our environment and our safety.
Well, we appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, so I'm going to go to Haley and then Roz. Go ahead, Haley.
Did you like that?
Awesome. Oh, we got you. Yep.
You can hear me?
Uh-huh.
So I'm wondering if there are plans to mitigate the likely impacts of like extreme weather, and also want to uplift the extreme weather caused by, you know, the drilling and burning of oil and gas. But yeah, wondering, like, as we are experiencing each and every winter, like precedent setting extreme weather events, especially with rain, and the likelihood, or, you know, the higher likelihood of oil spills or accidents, wondering how that will be impacted if the Q4 schedule is to move forward.
Hi, Haley. Thanks for joining us. I think your question is related to kind of the practical steps that the contractors would go through during the winter seasons, given whatever weather event might occur while we're doing the P&A work. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe we could have either the district reps or the contractors kind of talk a little bit about how you manage weather-related issues during the time that you're doing the work, and how you ensure safety around the site if you're unable to do work actively.
Great idea. Just everyone who's on tonight, I'll just let you know that we have Lane from Drill Tech on, and we have Alex from Atlas on, just in case questions like this came up.
I can jump.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, for the Central District, I can speak to what we have kind of in store and plans going forward. Each of the sites that we are operating in also have different types of soils, and a lot of this work that's being done are in areas. So, for instance, Kern Bluff, the area has been compacted over the many years. There's serviceable roads within and around the fields that have been there since the 50s. So there shouldn't be too many issues, but each of our programs, you know, again, even kind of mentioned it as well. We have spill drills, we have safety measures in place. And if or when we are in proximity to state waters, you know, we've coordinated with OSPR to make sure that they're aware, so that they can make sure that, again, our standards meet their expectations for protecting the surface waters of the state as well. But we don't anticipate too many major programmatic issues with regards to the rains, because most of it, at least in the Central District, most of the areas are flat, low-lying areas that drain fairly well, such as the agricultural fields. But if there is kind of local rain that starts to, we just kind of hold off for the day or 2 days to let things dry out, so we're not making it worse. especially on local roads, driving heavy equipment and stuff. It just came off earlier. That's up for Central. I don't know.
Thanks. Yeah. Netta or Abikun, you want to
So
share?
for Northern, I mean, I would just say, and I'll probably kind of offer Drill Tech to kind of speak to it in more details. But yeah, I think there are various factors that we take into consideration on how we stage the wells that we do and in what sequence we do them. Most of the wells we have in the Northern District are kind of very close to farming areas. So most of the biggest criteria for us is just the farming and the ag activities around there, and just to see kind of the different seasons and how that would affect what we do and where we do them. So yeah, the rain is also another factor that we take into consideration to determine what sites we go to first. But like I said, I would like to offer Drill Tech. I mean, if you want to add to that, because they're very experienced in kind of doing work in our area, and that's something they have a lot of experience with.
Can I?
And Lane and Carrie? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to also encourage Lane, if you could describe, like, how do you secure the site so that, you know, if you're going to have to stop work for a day or two, what happens with the wellhead, et cetera, to make sure that, you know, it remains a safe site?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I would say, you know, that's just part of our process. You know, we've been working in California for 35 years. We're used to the weather. And, you know, if we didn't account for the weather in our planning operations and can't execute operations safely, then we're going to have to stop. Like Mr. Ito mentioned, you know, once a well work does commence, let's say we're working on a well trying to conduct abandonment and a flash flood occurs, well, you know, we'll have proper blowout prevention, proper protection for while we're working on the well, so that in the event we can't access the location, you know, the well can be secured in a matter of seconds, you know, under a minute. We do drills on site weekly while we're working on these wells to ensure that we can close the equipment that's installed on the wells to prevent any flow of fluid outside the well. So this is all part of standard operating. Like Abukin mentioned, most of the wells in the Northern District are in heavy ag. There are a few that, you know, could be issues, and we'll have to, you know, when we get closer to the execution phase, we'll have to, you know if that's going to be a plan for winter operations. And, you know, if so, then precautions have to be made for all weather access. As far as in the near term for the Southern District, you know, as Netta mentioned, our first priority is the Allen Coast site, and it's concrete and asphalt and accessed by paved roads. So, you know, we will have to deal with the rain on the site because it does not run off, but I don't think that's going to cause any potential hazards to the public or the environment.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lane. Rohit, you want to add in one thing before we move on?
Yeah, quickly, from the district side, again, my name is Rohit Sharma with the CalGEM. So we also have a district incident plan, which have different scenarios, including flooding, fire hazard, landslide. So we do spill drills as well regularly, so that our staff are trained on those hazards. And I'll just quickly give an example of last year when we had a big flooding. We access and look into the most prone area to the flooding and try to make sure that there is no hazard present there. And we do, try to take out water if there are standing water, which could cause spills to the area and drain those areas. So just wanted to add that too.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to Roz next. And then I do see that there's questions that have been submitted, and I'm going to start reading those out. But after Roz, Leticia, I'm going to check in with you so you can double check if there's anybody on the 800 line who wants to ask a question or make a comment. So, Leticia, so I'm going to go Roz, Leticia, I see your hand, Haley. I want to read a couple of these questions, then I'll come to Haley, and then we'll read a few more. Go ahead, Roz.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation and the information. I think it was great knowing what the plan is and what has been done on site. And my question is that do you anticipate any specific challenges on the wells that we talked about in terms of specific subsurface conditions for the abandonment, like whether the temperature, whether it's on a lot of like a clay zones, like a thick clay zones that will require emerging technologies or recent technologies in the abandonment to be used, or all of these are just regular abandonment and like cement plugs will be enough?
All right. Who wants to answer that one?
I'll take that one if no one else wants it. Okay, these wells are pretty standard wells, so there's not going to be issues as you addressed there. Our biggest problem is that a lot of them are very old wells. And old wells over time deteriorate. The pipe or casing that's in the well gets beat up. Equipment's lost in the hole. So those are going to be our specific challenges is trying to successfully abandon wells that are in very poor condition. So that's going to be our major challenge out here.
Great. Okay, I am going to read a couple of questions and then I am going to go to Haley. So let's see here what we have. Okay, the contractor name that will be taking care of abandonment work. So in LA and in Ventura, it's Drill Tech. And in Kern County, it's Atlas. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Ibukun, we have a question about Canoga Park endangered species effort. Do you want to? Oh, sorry, that's Netta, not Ibukun. Netta, do you want to talk about where we're at with Canoga Park and endangered species?
Yes, actually, the biological survey is done. They conducted the survey for the site and also for the access road. And the report has been submitted and it's under review. And there are some mitigation methods that they are referred in the reports. And it's going to be in the package that's going to be submitted to the DOI for approval. And so that's the status at this time.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the next one is from the 126 wells, how many will require to drill a relief well to properly abandon the target well? Who would like to take that?
I can speak to that. Well, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think any of the well requires a secondary relief well to abandon them. I think to Robert's point, most of the challenges that we're going to encounter that we anticipate is just probably like fish in the hole and degraded casing, which would just require some operational methods, different operational methods to address them. But we think all the wells can be abandoned in a standard way without a need for relief wells.
Thank you. Okay, here's the next one. This is great, but it seems like everything is in the same status since July. I was told you're waiting for approval from the Department of Interior. Is there something I'm missing or some other holdup besides approval from the Department of Interior?
Yeah, I can take this one. So that is correct, except that since July, each of the individual districts have continued to move forward, taking care of items that they can. So the biological surveys, some of the prep work and the planning. So definitely work continues. It's just that the well work that we had anticipated starting earlier is what has changed. the Department of Interior approval is kind of the required step prior to us being able to begin that well work. And there are a couple of items that we're working closely with them on in order to get to that approval. So just from the standpoint of level of attention, this is one of my highest priorities right now. I've had a couple of meetings already in the last 5 days with the director of the Department of Interior's Office for Orphan Wells. We are really working closely with their staff to ensure that the items that we are putting together and the review processes are going to go as quickly as possible. But that is correct. Kind of that's the key final approval that we need before we can give the green light.
Thanks, Doug. Okay, the next one has to do with our prioritization method. So this question is, please explain why the 6 wells in Canoga Park are prioritized for LA County. The area does not appear to be a disadvantaged community. Robert?
Yeah, so I can answer that.
Yeah.
Disadvantaged communities was one of the priorities that we were looking at, but we were looking at all other things too, including wells that are leaking, wells that are close to people. And the Canoga Park wells in particular are wells that have been leaking oil. And so that's why they're a priority, is because they've been leaking wells and they're not that far from homes. And they're in a park area where lots of people walk by. So those wells are definitely a priority to us because of those reasons. And you're right, it's not a disadvantaged community, but that's one factor in there, but not the only factor.
Thanks. Okay, Haley, let me come to you. You've had your hand up for a long time, and then I'll go back to the list of written questions. Go ahead, Haley.
Thank you. I just have a question on sort of that process with Department of the Interior. So I'm wondering if one, if you know that if like any other states have run into this issue, and then two, like just any specifics you could provide on the timeline would be helpful. I know that there was kind of like a 45-day and then a 15-day review. Are we within that timeline? And then wondering if there's any threat, or if you all have thought about if there's threat with federal administrations possibly changing, and if that could impact us receiving the money if things don't pull together before the end of the year.
Okay, so the end of the year time frame is really it is preferential for us. It is a priority. It's not driven by another kind of milestone or implication. The federal money is not at risk in this particular case. The timeline, so one of the things that we're working on is there are generally identified timelines that the federal agencies will say, our review usually takes this long, or we specify a minimum number of days. So if you draw out that timeline, it's longer than what we would prefer. And so one of the reasons why we are working very closely with them, both in terms of getting them the information they need and making sure that we understand the processes involved, is so that we can shrink those timelines as much as possible. And so we are having a lot of really good conversations to that end, which is why we're not moving our timeline at all. And we're not actually putting out there the next date, because that's, it's still uncertain in terms of how much we're going to be able to shrink it. I have not been following the progress of other states in terms of their grant process. I do know that other states are receiving money, but I can't speak to that.
Thanks, Doug. All righty. So here's the next one. Is the 80 million all federal funding, or is it a mix of federal and state funding?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this one to Robert to describe the state and federal funding.
Okay, the 80 million is a mix of state and federal funding. We have multiple grants that we've gotten from the state, from the federal government. One was called an initial grant. We also just, a few months ago, received a formula grant with money. The first phase of it, we're going to receive more of that coming up. We have multiple programs as a state, including $50 million that we received in the general fund from the state. We receive $5 million a year in our oil, gas, and geothermal administrative account that can be used for abandonments. So we have multiple funds and money sources that we can work for. And the simple answer to your question is the $80 million is a combination of both state and federal funds.
Jamie, I wonder if you want to go back to slide 7 and leave that up for a minute so that folks who are on can also see that in writing again, because Robert has that on slide 7. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Robert. Okay. Next one. If there's 6 wells in Canoga Park that you don't know where they are, is that going to delay Simi Valley because CalGEM is still doing pre-plug and abandon work? Ibukun, you want to answer that one? I'm sorry, Neda.
So we have the location of the wells. I'm not sure the exact question because we know the location of the well. We have the history, and we are working on that.
Great. Does someone want to talk about the way that the work progresses in the various districts?
Actually, if I could jump in on that one, we in the state abandonment program, we do have provisions that if we do find wells when we're doing the site assessment, that would not, it would allow us to also tackle wells that we hadn't identified previously, within the context of the contract. So we do have flexibility from that respect, but that's the more general context than what Neda was specifically referring to.
Great. Okay, sorry. It's like the proximity of where these are. All righty. So here's one, Robert. I think this will be you. Is it true that CalGEM is only going to do the least amount possible and the very minimal to remediate the contaminated soil?
Okay, that was for me?
Yes. Want me to read it again? Sorry.
Okay. We are working with the Water Board to address these issues on soil remediation. There are certain limitations to what our authority can do. And so we're working with them to try and come up with solutions for what the best way of handling this is. In many cases, the soil remediation is the responsibility of the landowner. And a lot of times they actually would prefer to do that work. So this has been kind of a coordinated effort with the Water Board just to make sure that we address those issues, especially if there's going to be a development going forward in that. That's when the Water Board has a lot of authority to oversee the site remediation if somebody's going to develop the property where we're doing these abandonment work.
Thank you. Great. Okay. So this is Cameron, Neda, and Ibukun. Are any of your wells replugs?
No, for Central, they're all active wells. And a lot of them we've actually had to go back recently and actually cap because they were leaking or kind of left in a state of disarray as the operators work in those sites. So we have been doing some work on the wells, but all of these are active wells. No re-abandonments or sidetracking, or I think there's a complex abandonment question. And they're all pretty much straightforward wells.
Great.
Yeah, same for Northern as well. There are no replugs. They're all straight, fresh abandonment work.
Neda, you're on mute.
Some in Canoga Park that it's actually replugged. It's going to be a replugged.
All right, there you have it. Okay. Here's the next one. What is the lifespan of plugging? It's my understanding plugging is done with concrete, which degrades over time. Does CalGEM revisit plugging well integrity at set intervals of time?
Okay, I'll take that one. These wells are plugged with cement and heavy drilling mud. So what the goal is to plug off the oil production zone, put seals across the fresh water zones, and put seal at the surface, and fill that in other places with heavy drilling mud, all with the intent of making sure that there is no flow coming from the oil formation upwards into the future. Cement is one of the strongest materials and long-lasting materials that exists there. And in cases where what we've seen across the country is that it's been a very successful means, and that's why it continues to be done this way, not only in California, but across the state and across the world. There's we don't know what's going to happen 100 years from now, but I do know there is research on coming up with better materials, but as of this date, there isn't really a better material that's on the market there that can be used to abandon the wells as well as cement can.
And I would also like to add,
Sure.
The cement in the well is used. It's not the cement we see in the construction work. It's a special cement, and there are some requirements for this cement, like cement strength and compressibility, and this mud has the same standards. So these are specialized engineering cement and mud.
Right. All right. Here we've got one more that's a Department of Interior related, Robert. Has the Department of Interior or Doug approved any of these sites, or are we waiting for the whole $30 million project to be approved?
No, they have not approved any site yet, but we're working on multiple sites at the same time now and multiple submittals. So it's not all at once. We're going to have a submittal for the Alanco project. We're going to have a submittal for the Arvin Mountain View project. We're going to have a submittal for the Oxnard wells. And we're going to have many more submittals going into the future. Hopefully, once we figure out the whole process, we're going to get these things going so that they're not going to delay future work out there.
Thank you. All righty. Let's see here. Looks like here's our one of our last one. Will the land and water and ecosystem around the well sites be completely restored? You kind of guys answered this. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
I think maybe the only thing I'll add is, the reason why we're working with other state agencies who have regulatory authority over different environmental media is because they have both expertise and a different set of tools that will help ensure that that the land and the soil is brought up to the standard that's necessary for whatever the future land use is. And one of the examples that I've used, at least in these kinds of conversations, is if a site is intended, so say we plug and abandon a site, it's flat dirt. And the landowner who's a developer wants to come in and build something on it, there's going to be a different soil standard if what they're going to build is a park where kids are going to be playing and digging around in the dirt versus a parking lot where everything is going to be covered in asphalt or cement. And so that's why it's super important for us to be really in lockstep with the water boards and other state agencies who have expertise in this as we do, our due diligence at the end of our state abandonment, and then hand it off to those agencies to work with the landowners and developers who want to do something else with that land.
Thank you. Okay, so Netta, we have one other question about the wells. The wells you're overseeing that need to be replugged. And I don't know if you have this just handy at your fingertips, but the question is, if certain wells are being replugged, when were those sites first plugged and what was the cause for the need to replug?
I can say, based on the history, I believe maybe Lane can add more explanation because they are working on the work program at this time. But based on the history, some of them they have been plugged, but maybe not to the standard that it's supposed to be. That's why we are going through the reabandonment process. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Netta's, pretty much right. I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but there are several wells in Canoga Park that weren't properly abandoned. Like I said, I don't know the details of why or how or when they got that way, but there are several that are missing key components to the abandonment. That's why they're being considered for reabandonment.
The follow-up question is, do you know if those were leaking? I don't know if you guys need to circle back on that. I don't know what you have.
I'll have to
look at it. I have to look at it exactly which one is leaking because we have some of those where they are leaking, but I'm not sure if that's the one which is need to be replugged or not. But
Okay.
I can look at the data and
Great.
respond back. Yeah.
Great. All righty. Well, we originally had planned till 6:30. We're a little bit after, and I don't see any more hands up. We're so glad you could come this evening and hang with us for more than an hour. Doug, any closing thank you want to say?
Only to say thank you for spending all this time with us. We really appreciate the ongoing conversation. And please continue to be engaged in the project and send over your questions as you get them. We'll likely have more of these as we proceed and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
See you later. And big thanks again to all my DOC colleagues for the great meeting.